When you hear the name Nobel, what's the first thing that comes to mind? For most of us, it's the Nobel Prize, right? It's like the pinnacle of human achievement, a symbol of peace, progress, and the absolute best humanity has to offer. But the story of the man behind that prize, Alfred Nobel, well, it's one of history's great paradoxes. I mean, listen to these words straight from his will. They've literally set the gold standard for genius and humanitarian work for more than 100 years. It's this beautiful, idealistic vision for a better world. But the money that funded this vision, that's where the story gets really complicated. Because, and this is the crazy part, the very same man who wanted to reward peace and progress was also an arms dealer. He invented some of the most powerful military explosives of his time and built a massive fortune selling them. It just doesn't seem to add up. So who was the real Alfred Nobel? Okay, so let's rewind a bit. Alfred Nobel was born back in 1833 in Stockholm. He came from a family of engineers, so inventing was in his blood. He was brilliant, spoke 6 languages fluently. But his real obsession, his true passion, was chemistry. And that obsession would shape the entire first half of his life. His rise to fame was, you could say, explosive. It was meteoric, but also marked by incredible tragedy. In 1863, he gets his first patent for what he called blasting oil, which was basically a super unstable nitroglycerin. And just how unstable was it? Well, a year later, a factory explosion killed 5 people, including his own younger brother, Emil. But even after a loss like that, Nobel was relentless. By 1867, he had figured out how to tame the beast, patenting dynamite and launching a global empire that would literally reshape the world. So what was his big secret? What made dynamite so revolutionary? Well, Nobel's genius was in stabilizing nitroglycerin. See, on its own, the liquid was just way too unpredictable. He discovered that if you absorbed it into this porous, sandy stuff called kieselguhr, it turned into a stable paste. You could shape it, you could ship it, and most importantly, you could control when it went boom. It completely changed everything from mining to building railroads. And he didn't just stop at dynamite. Oh no, the man was always innovating. He went on to create gelinite, which was an even more powerful jelly-like version. Then came ballistite, one of the very first smokeless powders, which became essential for military ammunition and was basically a forerunner to modern rocket fuel. There was no question about it. Alfred Nobel was the king of explosives. So all these inventions made him unbelievably rich and famous. But his public image, how the world saw him, was about to be defined in a way he never, ever could have predicted. And it all started with a simple mistake. So picture this. It's 1888. Alfred's brother, Ludwig, who was also super successful, dies in France. But a local newspaper totally messes up the story. They thought it was Alfred who had died. So they went ahead and printed his obituary. And what Alfred Nobel read about himself that morning, it must have sent a chill down his spine. "The merchant of death is dead." That was the headline. Just let that sink in. This is how the world saw him. Not as a brilliant inventor, but as a guy who got rich from death and destruction. And the article itself, it got even worse. I mean, can you even imagine reading that about yourself? Who became rich by finding ways to kill more people faster than ever before? Wow. This moment is said to have absolutely horrified him. It forced him to really look in the mirror and confront the dark side of his life's work. And it made him determined to completely rewrite his legacy. So this brush with his own mortality, this glimpse into how he'd be remembered, sparked one of the most radical acts of philanthropy the world has ever seen. A few years later, in 1895, he sat down and wrote his final will, and that document changed everything. The scale of what he did is it's breathtaking. He didn't just donate a little chunk of his fortune, he gave away 94% of it. Almost the entire thing, worth over 200 million euros in today's money, was set aside to create a series of prizes. It was an absolutely incredible gesture. And in his will, he laid out his new vision. The prizes were for physics, chemistry, medicine, and literature, and then there was the 5th one, the big one, a prize for peace. The so-called merchant of death now wanted to reward people working for fraternity between nations. It was a direct, powerful statement, an attempt to build a legacy that was the complete opposite of his old one. But this grand plan almost never happened. When the will was read, everyone was stunned. His own family fought it in court, trying to get it overturned. Governments were suspicious. It actually took 5 long years of intense legal battles to finally establish the Nobel Foundation and bring his vision to life. The first prizes weren't awarded until 1901.
And you would think, okay, that's the end of the story, right? He redeemed himself. But the paradoxes surrounding Alfred Nobel's name didn't just disappear. In fact, his legacy has created whole new controversies that are still being debated today.
A perfect example is the price for economics. I'm sure you've heard of the Nobel Prize in economics. But here's the thing. It's not technically a real Nobel Prize. In his will, Nobel only set up 5 prizes. The economics one, that was created way later, in 1968, by Sweden's central bank to celebrate its anniversary. They just named it in memory of Alfred Nobel. And some people, including Nobel's own descendants, are pretty passionate about this distinction. His great-grandnephew, Peter Nobel, has said very clearly that the economics prize is basically an imposter. He argues it has nothing to do with what his great-uncle actually wanted. It's a debate that just shows how complicated and contested his legacy still is. So we're left with this incredibly complicated guy. Was he the merchant of death trying to buy a clean conscience? Or was he a brilliant inventor who saw the destructive power of his creations and decided to use his fortune to celebrate the very best of us? The truth is, he was probably all of those things. And that, right there, is the enduring paradox of Alfred Nobel.